The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
This is News Talk.
Yeah, you're very welcome along to Thursday Nights Off the Ball. It's Richie McCormick here with you until 10 p.m. tonight. It feels like the last 2 hours have brought a full week's worth of news. We'll try and catch you up on as much of it as we possibly can over the course of these next couple of hours, because there is a lot going on, or indeed there's a lot going off. While the contemporary landscape, as I say, is eroding at a rate of knots, the Republic of Ireland have discovered their Nations League itinerary. We'll look at what lies ahead for Stephen Kenny's squad in League B. Dan McDonnell is going to join us for the duration of the football show after 9 o'clock tonight. We have a special edition of Friday Night Racing looking ahead to the festive cards on offer over the course of the next couple of weeks. We're going to have Ger and Johnny Ward joined by Robbie Power and Katie Walsh. That was brought forward, Friday Night Racing, as you might imagine, by 24 hours because we thought we were going to have Leinster Montpellier tomorrow night. Turns out we're not. We'll get into that in more detail after 8 o'clock with Jerry Thornley, and we'll also tell you more about it on the Newsround imminently. And what will go ahead tonight, we'll look back on the week's football so far with the one and only John Giles. That is coming our way just before 7:30 tonight. If you want to get in contact tonight, you can do 53106 for 30 cent is how you can text us. You can tweet us as well at Off the Ball. We'll be delighted to hear from you and what you make of the day's stories. This show getting the go-ahead. Delighted to say joining us for the Newsround in studio is Anne-Marie Donlan.
Hi, Richie.
Good evening, and joining us online as well this evening is Joe Malloy. Joe, how are you?
Hey folks, how you doing?
It's as I say, it's been a bit of a turbulent couple of hours in the last while because we learned that Leinster's trip to Montpellier in the Heineken Champions Cup is off. 5 Premier League games across the weekend are now off, and we found out as well just before Liverpool take on Newcastle tonight that Curtis Jones, Virgil van Dijk and Fabinho have all tested positive in their squad for COVID-19. So the chances of Liverpool's game with Spurs going ahead of the weekend have suddenly gotten a little bit they've gotten a little bit wider, I think, at this stage, and it's turning into it feels like we've regressed, Joe, I guess is the short way of putting it. It feels like we've stepped back into March of 2020, and everything seems a little bit bleak, unfortunately.
It really does, doesn't it? The pace is quickening and the news is not good. The UK seems to be, London in particular, absolutely ravaged at the moment, and hopefully that fate doesn't befall us and we can get ahead of that a touch. But Premier League in massive trouble, even the Scottish Premier League Premiership in massive trouble. There's already mumblings and talk of a circuit breaker of sorts to just try and sort out what's going on at various Premier League clubs. And then Leinster Montpellier, I suppose all week we knew this fixture was in doubt, but it's the 28-0 scoreline in Montpellier's favour, which has clearly angered Leinster. So the EPCR have been talking about this, and they're pretty clear. They have a match risk assessment committee. It's made up of independent doctors. It's made up of people with expertise in virology. And what they cite in particular is the new positive COVID-19 test from Leinster. And Leinster, for their part, have come out and said, listen, we have had 5 rounds of antigen testing, 4 rounds of PCR testing in the last 6 days. We have a group of players and staff who right now have come through every stage of those tests, and they have been selected to travel to France and to play. And so as a result of all these tests, we even have a letter from Public Health Ireland saying we are good to travel. I suppose from the EPCR point of view, you will have noted, I'm sure, the Leinster press release today citing a number of senior players who've tested positive for COVID-19. So they don't specify the number. They just say an additional number. Now, that could be 1 or that could be 20. We don't know. Montpellier's last positive case was on Monday. So they had a 5th case on Monday, and they had a round of testing on Wednesday, which has turned up negatives all the way through. Leinster have had positive tests, plural, just today. And so clearly the EPCR and the advice that they're getting is that, well, with each passing day in Leinster, new cases are continuing to arise. And so the suspicion or the worry or the risk is that that trend is continuing. So even the bunch of players and staff who have tested negative and they fly out to France, there is obviously in the EPCR's mind a risk that some of those will test positive. Therefore, the match is not safe to go ahead. Now, in the Premier League world, that's not great, but it's not a 28-0 scoreline because there's room in the calendar. There is no room here. EPCR have to plough on, and so it's 28-0. Leinster beat Montpellier by 35. They put 35 points on the scoreboard away from home last year, they probably would have beaten Montpellier, who were themselves, whooped by Exeter last week. So in this sprint finish of a group stage, it really kind of puts them behind the 8 ball. Probably maybe not really with qualification, but certainly in terms of getting home venues or home fixtures for the knockout stages. And I guess, they can't risk another COVID outbreak and another 28-0. So, for Leinster, this is just disastrous, really. Disastrous in the context of sport. Obviously, hopefully everyone's okay.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think might have people scratching their heads a little bit this evening, is wondering why this seems to be, fault is the wrong word here, but it seems to be the EPCR's view that Leinster can't fulfil this fixture, whereby Leinster, as you mentioned there, have a letter from Public Health Ireland. They have selected a matchday 23 to travel, who are literally okay to travel. They went through all the hoops that they have to jump through to go to France to fulfil this fixture, and yet the EPCR say no. But instead of awarding a draw, which you would imagine is what Leinster were pushing for in this instance, because there's no fault here, Montpellier have gotten a 28-0 bonus point victory. That's where I think I don't think anybody would have a problem with a game being called off if there's sufficient risk, or if there's a worry that there's going to be an outbreak of COVID as a result of the fixture going ahead. I think what people will wonder about is why Leinster are being quote unquote punished here, because that's how it comes off, by awarding Montpellier a 28-0 bonus point victory.
I can see that argument. I can also see where the EPCR are coming from. So, I mean, it's not the EPCR making the decision. It's their medical group, their medical expertise. And the medical group are turning around and effectively saying, we have all the data from both clubs here. We have all the data. We're getting all the information. Montpellier, no positive case since Monday. They're okay to play. They don't pose a sufficient risk to cancel the game. So they're turning up, ready to go. Leinster do pose the risk. The reason the match is not going ahead is because of the risk Leinster pose. And so I can see why, therefore, it's 28-0 Montpellier. I do see how they've reached that decision. It's not fair on anyone. I mean, it's awful. It's not fair on Leinster. Leinster would have won the game, I suspect, if it had gone ahead. But when your medical committee is saying this is not safe, and it's not safe because of the risk posed by one team and not the other, I can see how the other team says, well, you can't take the points off us.
We saw that there was going to be meetings as well involving the EPCR and the LNR, who look after the French teams in the French League, about what's going to happen with the fixtures going ahead this weekend, because not only that, we've supposedly having Cast coming to Thomond Park on Saturday as well. Like, there's no word or no rumblings or anything like that we've got COVID outbreaks. Obviously Munster have gone through their own problems in the last couple of weeks, but we haven't seen anything really from the cash side of things. But if there is a case whereby French teams are suddenly find themselves in danger of travelling, this competition as it stands at the moment can end up collapsing very, very quickly.
It's teetering. Like, it is teetering. Last year there were obviously a whole host of 28-0 score lines, and there was just a degree of we just have to get on with it. I mean, if Leinster, arguably the favourites to win the thing, were not to qualify because of these kind of decisions, then the integrity of the competition is completely undermined. Completely undermined. Again, it's no one's fault. It's a product of COVID. It's a product of no flexibility in the rugby calendar. But I mean, like I said, when it starts happening to tournament favourites and potentially affects their chances of winning, then the integrity is massively undermined. And like, what's the conclusion? The conclusion is, well, we're in a pandemic. The world's not fair. Life's not fair. Get on with it. Do you know what I mean? What can you say beyond that? It's rotten, but that's unfortunately what can you do?
Yeah, it's going to repeat itself over the next couple of weeks. We'll get into what it means for the world of football as well, because we've seen 5 games called off. As I mentioned, Liverpool confirming 3 cases of COVID in their camp. Their game with Newcastle tonight does go ahead, but Virgil van Dijk, Fabinho and Curtis Jones have all contracted COVID. So the way the pattern has gone, it suggests that if there is 3 cases, then we're going to see more. And if we do see more, then their game against Spurs at the weekend is going to be in major doubt. We've already got 5 games this weekend preemptively called off because of various COVID-19 outbreaks. So the Premier League, as you mentioned there, like, there's been talk of a circuit breaker, but there's also, saw Miguel Delaney tweeting about it earlier on, saying that the Premier League seem determined to just press ahead. But again, like, we're talking about integrity of competitions is going to be something of an issue, because like, Spurs won't have played a game in like a month heading into to Christmas. If that's and it's a big if, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but if that Liverpool game happens to not go ahead at the weekend, then you've got teams who aren't playing for a month. You've got others who are playing catch up and end up playing like 3 games in a week, and suddenly the playing field is a little bit more uneven than the Premier League tends to be usually.
Yeah, so difficult for them. I mean, and the other thing is they may say, well, let's have a circuit breaker. And what does that guarantee? Have a circuit breaker, 2 weeks go by, and then you're due to play again. And it turns out another team put their hand up and say, well, sorry, actually, we've had an outbreak. So maybe the logic of just pressing ahead as they best can, when there's no guarantee a circuit breaker works for them, is the right thing to do. I guess they have a lot more flexibility. I mean, we may be in for a season with a raft of Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday night matches, and so be it. Again, it's just one of those things, isn't it? Yeah, integrity will come into question. It's not ideal, but nothing's ideal at the moment. So, there we are.
I think everybody's fear is going back to playing behind closed doors, but unfortunately that seems like it could be a reality. We'll get into the news round, which is of course brought to you by Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. Anne-Marie, we start with that Leinster disappointment.
Yeah, and their Heineken Champions Cup game, which was due to take place tomorrow evening, is off. As Joe said, the EPCR announced this evening that following a meeting of an independent match risk assessment committee, it was deemed the game couldn't go ahead safely. So therefore it has been awarded to Montpellier 28 points to 0. So that's 5 match points. They say that's in accordance with the tournament rules. Leinster have expressed their serious disappointment with this decision this evening, saying that their squad and staff have had 5 rounds of antigen tests, 4 rounds of PCR tests in the last 6 days. They had a group of players and staff ready to go to travel to France, and then the decision was made. They've questioned why the game could not have been deemed a draw.
And then the football as well, because we've got a bunch of games off. You want to run through them as well? Yeah,
the Premier League is resisting, as you said, calls to suspend all matches this weekend following 2 more coronavirus-related postponements this afternoon. Leicester City and Tottenham tonight had to be shelved, as did Manchester United and Brighton. That was due to take place at lunchtime on Saturday. And then this evening, 4 more games have had to be called off. Southampton and Brentford on Saturday, Watford and Crystal Palace on Saturday, West Ham and Norwich is also gone, and Leicester City won't be going to Everton on Sunday. So that means 5 of the 10 Premier League games at the weekend are gone, so half of the matchday fixtures.
But we do get 2 tonight.
Yeah, there are. It feels like this could be the last 2 for a while. Oh. There are 2 tonight, and in these 2 of the top 3 are in action. Second place, Liverpool entertain Newcastle. That kicks off at 8. And then at 7:45, Chelsea welcome Everton to Stamford Bridge. Seamus Coleman on the bench there for Everton.
Yeah, and
Rich,
go on, Joe.
I was just going to say the one hope for the Premier League is that there's no doubt, probably like all of us, let's be honest, that we felt like we were well past the worst of this, and Delta had a certain transmissibility, and so we had got into habits that were kind of doing okay. Whatever we were all doing was keeping the thing largely at bay, and so they've implemented this week, haven't they, a whole bunch of new protocol around Premier League clubs, testing before you enter the building, big emphasis on mask wearing, all that kind of stuff again. So I suppose the hope would be there'll be a maybe 10-day lag, but that the environments become very sterile again, and that's, we just have this brief window of Omicron running rife, but that the new protocol maybe, counter that again and things get up and running pretty quickly. That's the hope.
Well, the next round of Premier League tests will be interesting, because it went from 12 to 42 in the last round. So you'd imagine whatever that multiplies by.
Yeah, Martin Ziegler had a good point earlier on. He tweeted out saying unvaccinated players are causing disproportionate problems in the Premier League's COVID crisis. The latest figures show that only 68% are double jabbed in the Premier League. So that's 32% obviously that aren't double jabbed against COVID-19. In the English Football League, so those are the 3 tiers below the Premier League, 25% say they've no intention of being vaccinated. You contrast that with La Liga, says Ziegler, where 92.8% are vaccinated, plus 4.3 with antibodies. So there is, like, Jurgen Klopp had another statement about this today. He obviously had made a very serious point about it yesterday in his pre-match press conference, that they at Liverpool are doing their best to make sure that everybody is double jabbed, and making sure everybody that's eligible for a booster can get a booster and is getting a booster. So there are clearly some clubs who are more proactive about this than others. And I know Liverpool obviously have had 3 cases today, so people will say, what use does it do? But it does cut down on the chances of you catching this thing and therefore spreading this thing. So the onus has to be on clubs to really hammer this home, because otherwise we are in a situation where fixture lists are just being torn up completely, because people aren't getting jabbed.
Yeah, and more seriously than fixture list, people are falling seriously ill and worse. And it applies to all of us. It goes beyond football. Look, we've had this conversation a million times. Jurgen Klopp was, I thought, great yesterday, made the very simple point. Why don't you just listen to people who know more than you about this? It's generally been a pretty good rule of thumb for humanity. It's allowed us improve with each passing generation. Listen to people who know more than you. Follow the medical advice of experts, and we may find a way out of this thing. As to why it's not happening in the broader community, I mean, we all know the reasons why, and football even seems to be a more extreme version of that, where their body, in effect, is their livelihood. And so they are easily spooked, I would suspect, and I wonder how many of them think Christian Eriksen was vaccinated. Christian Eriksen, was vaccinated, and his heart trouble in the Euros was as a result of that. I wonder how many of them think that when he wasn't, and where these rumours have taken hold in certain dressing rooms, and once they're in the back of a player's mind, Rich, it seems to be hard to get them to listen to sense or reason. And those stats are scary, and those stats are even much better than where we were even 2-3 months ago. I mean, it was chronic for a while. It was like 20%, 30% when the rest of the population was mostly done. Very slow.
We have to get to the Nations League draw as well, Anne-Marie. Very exciting stuff for the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah, Stephen Kenny's side will take on Scotland, the Ukraine and Armenia. That's in League B of next year's Nations League. Northern Ireland then drawn in League C alongside Greece, Kosovo and either Cyprus or Estonia. And there's an interesting group in League A where England, Germany, Italy and Hungary will all meet.
I was going through these groups, Joe. It looks like if you placed us as third seed, obviously, which we are, in any of the groups, I don't think we could have had an easy draw. We would have the alternatives would have been Iceland, Russia and Albania, Bosnia, Finland and Montenegro, Sweden, Norway, Slovenia. This looks like it's okay. Stephen Kenny has obviously spoken in the past that they are targeting this as something that they will look to try and win in terms of the group and what it might offer them going forward for European Championship qualification. It's navigable. I think you can say that much.
Yeah. I haven't seen much of the Armenians of late, I'll be honest. 89th in the world, we're 50th. The Scots we're obviously familiar with. They're on a high. Beat Denmark at Hampden recently, and they just look to be a country in love with football at the moment and in love with that team, and their World Cup qualification still very much alive. So Scotland will be a really good measure. I mean, and we should aspire to be every bit as good as Scotland. Similar populations, similar footballing cultures and profiles. So that's a really good test. Ukraine, 27th in the world last time I checked. I don't remember much about their Euros campaign. I know they beat North Macedonia and they beat Sweden in the round of 16. What I remember from Ukraine is when England hammered them 4-0 and they looked really tired, like a beaten docket.
Belgium?
They did. I went through the results earlier on, and there's literally there's the 4-0 shipping to England back in July, but everything else is much of a muchness. There's nothing really. And
to be honest, the words you used, I mean, it's very doable. It's navigable, and that's the nature of the Nations League, isn't it? That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be teams around our level. And anyone can kind of beat anyone. So, look, Stephen Kenny seems to be about to get the new contract and take him through to the Euros qualifiers. It kind of, now we're into results territory. Now we do want results. So I think this is going to be really interesting.
The Scots as well. That's the one that I think is probably going to be the trickiest out of a lot of them. Ukraine, I joked about it earlier on, but in a geopolitical sense, we're heading to a country there that could be invaded by Russia within the space of 6 months, and their situation could be very, very different to what it is now. Armenia, we've come across them in the past. We've been able to beat them in the past with relative comparative ease. It seems like it's something that could be doable if events conspire away, and God knows they don't seem to have been doing that for everybody else at the moment.
I would like to hope that we're beyond hoping Putin destabilises Europe to get us a result in the Nations League, but let's see.
We'll put in a phone call and see what he can do. But geez, talk about a security risk. That League A group with England, Germany, Italy and Hungary. I'd imagine there's a few authorities across Europe gulped when they saw that being drawn out.
And Hungary, did you say?
Hungary, yeah.
Yeah. Big fans of those guys. They really enjoyed that.
A great bunch of lads. And before we go, Anne-Marie, as well, further Formula 1 fallout, it seems like Mercedes are letting it lie.
Yeah, they withdrew their appeal over the result of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix today, meaning Max Verstappen is officially the Formula 1 world champion. Lewis Hamilton's team obviously unhappy with the way he was overtaken in that final lap, after the controversial safety car restart. Mercedes welcomed the FIA's decision to investigate the circumstances of the race today, but they also congratulated Verstappen and Red Bull on their achievement.
Yeah, I think nobody wanted that one to be settled in the courts. Anne-Marie, thank you so much for coming in this evening for the news round. Joe, as well, we'll let you go and kind of quarantine and isolate and stay clear of that Omicron awfulness. Thank you so much.
Cheers, guys. See you.
We had a texter as well, Brian in Waterford, saying, just saw the Nations League draw today. It all seems very complicated, so I presume you'll have Kevin Kilban on the show tonight to simplify it for everyone. Well, Brian, we may have that for you a little bit later on. But now, let's talk cash.
All you need for Christmas.
News Talk's Christmas cash machine.
Oh, get in there! Oh, thank you! Oh my God, I can't believe it!
Your chance to win big.
Yeah, and Ed Gordon